You remember every cruel thing anyone ever said to you, word for word, tone included. A comment from 15 years ago is more vivid than a compliment you got yesterday. This happens for a specific reason. Somewhere along the way, your brain decided cruel things were more true than kind things. And once it decided that, once it started treating harshness as honesty and gentleness as performance, it began building a case against you, using evidence you never questioned. Here's what nobody tells you about that. The case is comprehensive, detailed, organized, and completely wrong. Here's how the drift started. Someone said something cruel to you once, maybe when you were young, maybe when you were vulnerable, and instead of dismissing it, instead of recognizing it as one person's opinion in one bad moment, you filed it differently. You filed it as true. You didn't sit down and decide this person knows me better than I know myself. You just believed them. And once you believed one cruel thing, the next one was easier to believe. Then the next. Then the next. Until your brain developed a pattern. Cruel things get stored as data. Kind things get dismissed as noise. And the pattern kept running, year after year, person after person, comment after comment, until you had a catalog. Every dismissive remark, every cutting observation, every time someone said something that felt like confirmation of what you already suspected about yourself, all of it preserved perfectly, ready to replay at full volume the second something reminds you. Meanwhile, the kind things, the compliments, the reassurance, the moments people told you they valued you, those faded. You heard them when they were said. You might have even appreciated them in the moment. A week later, you couldn't remember the exact words. A month later, you couldn't remember who said it. A year later, you couldn't remember it happened at all. Your brain stopped treating kindness as reliable information. Here's what that looks like in practice. A teacher said something dismissive about your abilities in front of the class when you were 12. You're 30 now. You can still hear their exact phrasing. You can picture where you were sitting. You remember what you were wearing. A friend made a joke at your expense years ago that everyone laughed at. You've forgiven them. You're still friends. You replay that moment when you're trying to fall asleep. Someone you cared about said something cruel in the middle of an argument. They apologized. They didn't mean it. They've proven since then that they value you. Doesn't matter. You remember what they said more clearly than any apology they gave. The cruelty doesn't fade. It sharpens. Every time you replay it, the details get clearer. The meaning gets heavier. The evidence gets stronger. And this happens automatically. Your brain does it without asking, filing every harsh word under things that are actually true about me, discarding every kind word under things people say to be polite. Here's when the drift became permanent. At some point, you stopped questioning it. Stopped asking why one cutting remark from a decade ago lives in your head more vividly than every compliment you've received in the past year. Stopped wondering why your memory treats criticism as permanent and praise as temporary. It became normal. This is just how you remember things. Some people remember faces. Some remember names. Some remember numbers. You remember every time someone said something that hurt. And when you say it like that, it sounds like a problem. To you, it feels different. It feels like paying attention. The cruel things are real. They're what people actually think when the filter comes off. When they're angry or unguarded or finally being honest. The kind things are the filter, the performance, the things people say when they're trying to spare your feelings or maintain the relationship or avoid conflict. And if that's what you believe, if you genuinely think harshness reveals truth and gentleness hides it, then remembering every cruel thing makes sense. It's accuracy. You're just refusing to ignore the evidence. Here's the cost. The first cost is weight. Most people hear something cruel and it stings and then it fades. For you, it accumulates. Every harsh word you've ever heard is still there, still active, still ready to play back whenever something triggers it. You're carrying everything. A comment from childhood, a remark from last year, a joke someone made 5 years ago, all of it equally present, all of it equally heavy. The second cost is authority. By remembering every cruel thing perfectly, by replaying it, by treating it as evidence, you've given other people the power to define you. Someone who is angry said something in a moment of frustration. You've been using it as a fact about yourself ever since. Someone who barely knew you made an assumption based on incomplete information. You've treated it as more accurate than your own experience of yourself. Someone who was wrong about you said something cutting. You've let their wrongness become your truth. The third cost is the gap between how you see yourself and how people who care about you see you. They see someone capable, valuable, worth knowing. You see someone who has been accurately described by every harsh thing anyone ever said. They don't understand why you can't accept the compliment. You don't understand why they can't see what everyone else has already said out loud. The gap exists for a specific reason. You've been weighing evidence unevenly for so long, you've lost the ability to see yourself clearly. Here's the awareness, and it's uncomfortable. The cruel things you remember carry no more truth than the kind things you forgot. They're just louder. People say cruel things for reasons that usually have nothing to do with accuracy. They're angry, they're projecting, they're trying to win, they're careless, they're wrong. Sometimes they say something cutting purely because it'll hurt, regardless of whether it's true. And you've been treating that anger, projection, carelessness, strategy as more reliable than thoughtfulness, care, or genuine observation. That's bias toward pain. You've built a system that prioritizes suffering over clarity. A system that treats harm as evidence and care as distortion. And when you run that system long enough, the conclusion becomes inevitable. Of course you think the worst things about yourself are true. You've been collecting them for years while throwing out everything that contradicted them. Here's what doesn't change. The memory stays. The words are filed too deeply. The details are too sharp. You'll still remember what people said. But remembering and believing are different actions. You can remember what someone said without treating it as true. You can acknowledge that it hurt without using it as proof. You can recognize that your brain has been running a bias system for years, collecting evidence for one conclusion while ignoring evidence for any other. The cruel things carry no more honesty than the kind things. They're just the only ones you've been keeping. And a case built entirely from selective evidence doesn't reveal truth. It confirms what you already suspected. You've confirmed your worst beliefs. You haven't discovered what's real